Hello, everyone. My name is Shashwat DC, and welcome back to yet another Nature Writing for Children webinar series brought to you by Azim Premji University. As most of you might be know, and if you don't, let me just tell you again that this series is a set of conversations that we have with authors, publishers, illustrators, talking about the various aspects of nature writing for children and what it really entails. So today we are very fortunate to have with us a very favorite author of mine, Arefa Tehsin, who is joining us from, from Sri Lanka, Colombo to be precise. She's a very, she has written numerous books. I think the last count was 20 plus, if I'm not wrong. She has written more than, so many books on different aspects of wildlife and nature and different other things. She has also been nominated to a whole lot of prizes, awards, and things. And most importantly, she has been an honorary warden of Udaipur. Yeah, so wildlife warden of Udaipur. So thank you so much, Arifa, for joining us today, and I look forward to this conversation with you.
Thank you, Shashwat, for the very kind introduction. And I'm really glad to know that you like my books.
No, no, your books. I'm sure there'll be very few who would, it will be a very small minority who might not like, but there's not, your books are wonderfully written, very informative, I must say. I really admire the way you bring different aspects of nature, environment, flora, fauna, and how you weave stories around them. So that's a very fascinating read. uh, it's, I must confess that they are largely meant for children, but I enjoy them much more than possibly children's too. So I guess, so
I had read
that's
it
a honest
somewhere that if
confession.
it is not good enough for adults, it is not good enough for children.
Wonderful. So I'll start off, Arifa. First thing, you have said that you grew up treading jungles with a naturalist father. So what are your first memories of the wild, and if you can just take us through your journey as a as a growing up in Udaipur, and then how did you embrace nature writing per se, or writing books for children?
Right. So that's a very broad question, actually. I can speak a lot on it, but I'll try to be concise. I'm actually very fortunate, Shashwat, to have had an extraordinary childhood. Not just my father, but my entire family. So I was born into a family of nature lovers and environmentalists. My grandfather is one of the earliest big game hunters turned conservationist of India. He was a contemporary of Jim Corbett, and I think they both used to exchange correspondences as well. And in pre-independence era, he had the monopoly of arms and ammunition business in southern Rajasthan, in Mewar, some 98 shops of Arefa Tehsin and Sons and so on. And he was very fond of nature and tribals. So even after independence, as an acting mayor of Udaipur, he did a lot of work for tribal upliftment. And then there was my grandmother, who was the initiator of women's education movement in southern Rajasthan, one of the initiators. She didn't have a leg. She, was a disabled person, but she did a lot of work for, people used to come and throw stones at our place for educating the girl child in those days. And she was the vice president of the All India Women's Conference, of which Maharani Gayatri Devi was the president of the Rajasthan chapter. And later on, having this matriarch and patriarch of the family, they always encouraged their children to do a lot of social work in whichever field they wanted to. So I had this whole family of uncles and aunts and my father, everybody pursuing something or the other which they passionately felt about. So my father, of course, became the initiator of wildlife conservation movement in Rajasthan, in southern Rajasthan. One of my aunts was a socialist leader. She has gone to jail so many times with Lohia and JP and all that. Then one of my uncles, Riyaz Tehsin, he was heading institutions like Bharatiya Lok Kala Mandal and Vidya Bhavan Society, which is a group of 17 institutions, and so on. And on his invitation, everyone from, Manmohan Singh to Vajpayee and who not have visited Udaipur, and, many have come home as well. And so on. So we had this very thriving ecosystem at home. We have a family lane in Udaipur. and on both the sides, entire family is there, and it's a very close knit family, like one for all and all for one kind of a thing. And every evening we have our evening tea together. So we used to have people from all over the world who would come to meet either my grandparents or my uncles and aunts, my father, everyone from morning till night. My grandmother would tell me that her pot of tea would not stop boiling from 5 a.m. till 12 midnight. So that is the kind of exposure that I got. And also, it is a very green lane, so we have left a lot of space for wildlife there. We have more than, I think, around 20 varieties of fruits growing there. So in every season, we would have something or the other growing. So me and my cousin Saadat, who's now a pilot in Qatar Airways, we both were almost of the same age, and we would keep shifting our base, throughout the year with the squirrels and the birds, depending on which season it was and which, tree they were attacking, and we would also be there. And we had mongooses and cobras and whatnot in this green patch, because obviously in cities you generally don't find a lot of space for urban wildlife nowadays. And the weekly outings that we had of the family were never to a shopping mall or to see a film, in the theaters. It would always be to the Aravalis. So we would just, pack whatever we had to and go and, sit by a stream or sit in a valley and, enjoy our little food that we had got along, and maybe take a bath in a stream. So, and my father, he started taking us to the forests since, we were infants. So I sort of grew up in the forests, in the jungles as well with him. And he's known as the Vasco da Gama of that region, because he has tread most of those forests on foot and helped to design all the sanctuaries and all that we have there today. And he initially, of course, he fought a lot with the government, because in the earlier days the government didn't know anything about conservation, even in the initial years after the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. And we had done a lot of damage through the state to the forests and the wetlands all around. So even now, if you look, some of the places that are remaining in India, which are preserved, used to be the erstwhile hunting grounds of the Maharajas and Nawabs. Because at least then they were protected. They were hunting, but the hunting was also regulated, and it was only a handful of people and nobody else was allowed to do that. In fact, soon after independence, when Mewar acceded into the Union of India, one of the first things that government did was they seized all the weapons from the armory of the Maharana, and they actually sold it. I'm talking about Rajasthan, Mewar. And they actually sold it at throwaway prices to the tribals and anybody who could afford it. So suddenly you had the whole populace that was armed with good weapons and with no regulations. So obviously, what did you expect? And with all the contracts that happened of, cutting down forests and, hunting crocodiles for their skin and so on and so forth. So that there was a lot of damage done. And my father started fighting against all this in those initial years. He gave up hunting. He himself was a big game hunter. I still have his weapons, which have been passed on to me, some wonderful weapons. But he completely gave it up. He would have spent his entire life's earnings on fighting for conservation. He didn't make a penny out of it. So, I grew up in that sort of environment. And so that was the sort of upbringing I got. And Daddy, of course, exposed us to the forests. Every summer holiday, we would be there in some or the other forest in southern Rajasthan and spend the summers there in a dilapidated forest guest house or something, with the animals visiting us. And he would even, he was the advisor of the zoo committee in Udaipur. So he would take me inside the cages of leopards and bears and crocodiles and pythons so that I lose all fear of animals. And I did, to a great extent. And he always told me when I was growing up not to fear the dark, not to fear the wildlife, and not to fear the unknown. and that if I came across anything which I could not explain, I should try to get to the bottom of that mystery. So he also raised us as a rationalist.
Yeah, fascinating. I must confess that in your book, "The Steed of the Jungle God," that's where I kind of you get a very good introduction to the family that you have, the illustrious family, the Tehsin family that is there, is starting very much from Bapu to your grandmom, and of course your father. So I'm very happy that the guns that your father was writing at that time that he has inherited from Bapu, now some of them are in your collection. So but that apart, now that you've got, we're talking about Dr. Raza, I wanted to ask you is you have co-authored books with him, and as
Right.
far as I know, that is the only father-daughter duo of nature writing that I can recall. So, how was this collaboration working? How did it work? What was the process? How did how did you get along to writing so many books together?
Right. So Shashwat actually he had armed me very well. He had given me enough ammunition when I was growing up to prepare me, for whatever I wanted to do, especially in the field of environment and nature. And he has been a treasure trove of knowledge from Houdini to the Pearl Harbor, from Orang, Pandak or Yeti to tsunami. He told us about everything. He was an avid reader and writer as well, and he would retain a lot of whatever he would read. We have a library at home. Of course, it's a common library of all my uncles and aunts, and it has some of very rare books which are out of print now. So we have many people even coming home just to look at the books. So he, of course, always encouraged me to write as well, because he himself was such an avid writer, especially when he had to build awareness in public for nature and environment. These were unknown terms at that time. Conservation, wildlife conservation was not known. I mean, nobody was talking about that. Even the Forest or Wildlife Department were not actually. So he used to write a lot, for his friends in the media, like in the PTI or Dainik Bhaskar, Rajasthan Patrika, the local and the regional media and the national media everywhere. So he would always encourage me to write, and I started contributing to the Times of India. I started contributing features to this newspaper when I was in school, when I was, I think, in my 10th or 11th grade, and. And the other thing is that, of course, yeah, so nature writing naturally came to me. When I started writing, it had to be about nature, because wildlife is my extended family and the jungles are my second home. So the setting came naturally to me when I started writing. And I was also encouraged a lot in the school to write. I should mention that, because sometimes school and teachers, the appreciation that you get from them is more precious to a child sometimes than the appreciation that she or he, or whatever gender they are, get in their homes, because they kind of take it for granted. They're like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm the hero, I'm the princess, I'm the prince, whatever. At home, of course, for my parents. But I remember writing this essay called Kachra Patra Ki Atmakatha in Hindi as my exam essay for my Hindi paper. And my teacher, Rathod madam, was so impressed with that essay that she read it in the parents teacher meeting. She also read it, in the assembly and so on. So I really felt a lot encouraged to write. And as far as storytelling is concerned, again, my father's contribution is there, and I think I was a born storyteller. I used to, tell all my fellow students, my cousins, everybody, I used to make stories and tell them. So Sadat and I, as I said, grew up together, my brother. I used to tell him about this alien called Jack, who was, stuck up in our garden. He couldn't really go anywhere. He was an alien. His spaceship had broken. And in the daytime, he would become a beetle. And at night, he would come back to his actual form. So Sadat and I were so moved by his plight that we started selling raddi of the house to, gather enough money to build a spaceship for Jack and send him back. So, that was the kind of storyteller that I was. So I don't know if Sadat, who's a pilot today and who's, flying the 380s and whatnot, sometimes, finds Jack's spaceship in the space somewhere. But yeah, so I was always a story weaver and a storyteller since childhood. And one of the things that my father told me when I started writing, he said, if you're writing for children, the best way to connect them to nature is not through preaching and teaching. It has to be through stories. So that was an advice that I really took to heart, and I always worked on that. And as far as taking, writing seriously and writing is concerned, I mean, I used to write on and off, of course, when I was in school, and then even when I came to Sri Lanka, I had a column here in the national newspaper. But I never thought of pursuing it, more than that, until my partner Aditya, he started pestering me to take my writing more seriously. And all livid at his insistence, I started to write my first novel for young adults. It is called Iora and the Quest of Five. And I didn't have a laptop at that time. I didn't even have a desktop. I didn't have anything. So what I would do is I would take pages from Aditya's office, the rough pages from the printer, and I started writing on that. And that novel I finished in around 3 months' time. It is a rainforest-based fantasy, and I went on to write 6 novels in the series. It is now being published in the US, and that was the first book I wrote. This is the book, and
Yes.
after that, I got so hooked to writing that there was no looking back for me. And as far as the father daughter duo, as I said, he had fed enough to me when I was growing up. So my compost heap, as I like to call it, my internal compost heap of ideas was brimming. And I just needed a little bit of direction from him. So whatever I would write, I would, of course, he would guide me. His knowledge of animal behavior is exceptional, because he has learned everything on the field. So I would, of course, learn a lot from him, the small things which I could not find anywhere else, either on Google or Wikipedia or you name it, nowhere else. I would just, discuss with him and he would tell me. And he would read my drafts. He would tell me what was right about some animal that I had written, what was not correct. And yeah, that's a process. And The Steed of the Jungle God, which you said you have been reading, is about his experiences in the wild in 70 plus years of his jungle wanderings, or 80 plus years now, in southern Rajasthan, and the phenomena that he has come across, which can be attributed to ghosts and spirits, and his quest for rational explanation behind those phenomena. So we had grown up hearing these stories. So, I really didn't need to ask a lot about these stories to him. And I thought it would make a good book to read rather than, just a tedious non-fiction book about the wildlife and tribal facts of southern Rajasthan. So I thought, why not write a collection of these stories? And some of them are also from my family, Bapu and Riaz Chacha and others. So I thought, let's compile that and write a book. So of course I asked a lot of things from him, because the devil is in the details. So you have to get those details correct. Especially, the Mewadi that I have used somewhere or the other in the book.
Yeah.
All those things I'm not really, I understand Mewadi, I can't speak it. So yeah, so those little things, it has been a fun process. In fact, when I was writing this book, I shifted to Udaipur for a year. And that is
Okay.
when I would meet him every day, sit down with him, write it and rewrite it, and then finally we reached the final draft, and it was a fun process.
Yeah, wonderful. And if I had just one question, because the when you started writing books, and was it you know, uh, because nature writing for children is a genre that has really gained steam over the past years. Even when we started off these webinar series in 2020, people were still wondering what is nature writing for children, and what sort of is it really popular, is it valid. When you started writing, there weren't many things. So was it a conscious choice of yours that okay, you'll write books about nature and you'll pursue those themes, or it just came to accident because of all the wonderful experiences that you had growing up?
Yeah, so Shashwat, as I said, it naturally came to me. And also, I believe that, children should rather know the names of birds and animals than cars and celebrities. So, I really wanted to bring this to children, something which I very deeply loved. So, you have to have affection to take action for anything. So that is what I wanted to connect the children with, through these stories. And I really do feel very strongly for nature. And when I talk to children today, and when I started writing almost, I think, maybe 18 years back or more than that, this nature writing for children, or 20 years back, in fact. So at that time, of course, as you said, it was almost an unknown genre. Nobody was writing about it. And whenever I would talk to them, people didn't know about it. And even at that time, the climate change was not really a big thing in that sense. When you look at early 2000s and all that, the climate change, yeah, it was making a bit of wave here and there, but it was not that the whole society was talking about it. There were just a
True.
handful of individuals that were talking about it. So yes, I wanted to really bring this forth to children, because children are the change makers of tomorrow. They should know something, as much as they can about it. And as author Arthur Louvre has said, that today's children are growing they have a complete disconnect with nature. And he has termed this term called nature deficit disorder, in which he says that alienated from daily interaction with nature, children today are growing with a complete non-understanding of nature, and that is what kind of impedes their all-inclusive growth. So I thought it was very, very important for me, for children to understand that, and even for their parents and all the adults to understand that we may think that we are the ones who are saving nature, but it is the nature who is saving us, and for how long, it depends on our collective action as a species.
Wonderful. Yeah. Arifa, one question, and this is yeah, you spoke about writing for children. What are the challenges, if I may ask, as an author, that you find for writing for children, especially because many of your books have been non-fiction books, as you would term them to be, right? But in when you're writing for children literature, the lines between fiction and non-fictions are very blurred, because even when you tell them a fact, it has to be told in a manner that it sounds almost fantastical in that sense. So according, as an author, what do you feel are the biggest challenges, and what are the things that people should bear in mind when they are writing books for children?
Um, well, one of the things, Shashwat, I feel, I don't think it is challenging at all for me to write for children or for adults for that matter, because what happens is that I become what I write. So, even you showed that novel, The Witch in the People Tree, which you will be starting to read now. I would, when I was writing it, I was suffering a case of skipping personalities. So one day I would be Rao Sahab, coming from his estate on a horseback. The other day I would be an untouchable girl carrying a basket of, feces on my head. Yet another day I would be a Muslim widow who's losing all her senses, who's very old. Yet another day I would be somebody else. So, I actually become that. And so I don't really feel kind of even skipping between genres, or between writing for children or writing for adults. So I don't find it challenging in that sense. And also, as I said, that I love nature so much that especially nature writing comes very naturally to me. So even when I wrote my first novel for adults, The Witch in the Peepal Tree, which is a period murder mystery set in 1950 Udaipur and spread over only one day of Makar
One single
Sankranti.
day.
One of the authors, in fact, and a professor of literature, Mariam Kareem Ahlawat, she actually wrote to me and she said that, this is one of those very few books in recent times that has so much nature in it. Although it's a murder mystery, but subconsciously I have been writing. I nature has to be a protagonist for me in everything that I write. So
Mm.
it comes very naturally to me. And as far as writing for children is concerned, one of the things I would like to tell to everyone is to not look down upon children when you are writing for them. Treat them as intelligent beings who are on the same level as you are in many ways, emotionally at least, or you do not have to infantilize them. As I
Mhm.
said initially when you introduced me, something that is good for adults, it has to be good for children as well. If you're writing, so that is something that I do. I speak to them on equal terms, and that is what makes my writing also easier because I'm not really taking an effort. Yes, as far as a few issues are concerned, as far as the language is concerned, those things you have to simplify. And when I write for nature, I don't generally try to paint a doomsday scenario. We have enough of it,
Yes.
going around when
Yeah.
anybody is talking about climate change and nature. So I always give a lot of hope. Whenever I write, I do point out whatever the problems are, where we are headed, and all that it entails, the way we are headed with the so called development and everything else. But I try to do it in a fun way so that children feel connected to it.
Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. That said, and I kind of now see your point where you say that the books have to be relevant not only to the children but everyone in general. So yeah, that kind of explains why I like your books as much as any other children would. But
Thank you,
one thing I
Ashwin.
must.
Also, sorry, I would like to add here that one of the I also started writing on social issues for children, which are difficult to talk about. So one of my books, which is called Gupshup Goes to Prison, it is about introducing children and even adults to the open prisons in India, the concept of open prisons. And we have so many of them. We have more than 30 of them in Rajasthan, and we have several all over India. So, how it is important to have these kind of places which help the prisoners to be integrated into the society again, but again, without being too, information heavy and things like that, you can do it in a light manner. And that is what I have tried to do with a lot of books, other than nature, on social issues, which I've written for children.
Fascinating. So I was coming to the thing. Your like one of the books that you have, "Do Tigers Drink Blood," is a very interesting book because of one fact. It's also very deeply researched book. There's so much information packed into the book, even in while in the backyard. So I just wanted to know your process of research that you do, the kind of effort that goes behind writing each of these books, including the one that we have, the Great Indian Safari, which is one of your latest book that has come out, which talks about takes
Right.
us to journey through different lands. So if you can just take us through that process in some of these books and give us an insight into that.
Um, so, yeah, many of my books are actually fiction as well. It's not that most of, even in fiction, I try to kind of, weave uh, facts about various things. And I do a lot of research when I write fiction as well. So, for instance, Wild in the Backyard, as you mentioned, or Do Tigers Drink Blood, and 13 other mysteries of nature, and be it Tales from the Wild, in fact,
Yeah.
is fiction. It is not
Yeah.
non-fiction, and so is The Land of the Setting Sun and Other Nature
Yes.
Tales. That is also fiction. It is a collection of stories that tells about different animals and their behavior and the facts around them, but in a story form. So it can be a story of mystery, it can be a story of adventure, but these are all, and even the elephant bird. I don't know if you have read this
Yes.
one. This
Yeah.
has been
Yeah. I
translated
have.
in more than 35 languages.
Yes.
And in this, I have written about the extinct elephant bird,
Extinct.
but I have written a story around it. So, so yeah. Um, uh, what I try to do is present facts, whichever way, either that is fiction or non-fiction, but I try to do it in a fun way, in an entertaining way, so that anybody who is reading it doesn't feel bored, and I don't feel bored writing it, because I have also read a lot of books which are, of course, really amazing books as far as the information is concerned, but they can be a bit tedious to read. So
Mhm.
even the latest book, The Great Indian Safari, my editor Shoini at Puffin and I were discussing how there are very few books in India that introduce younger children to the wildlife and national parks and sanctuaries of India. So then I thought, why not write a book about it, about this, and who better to take you around than Chad the Bard. Now, he is an
Yeah.
expert guide and he likes to make a rhyme now and then. And he's a bit of a show off. But believe me, he's the best guide that you will find for, the Indian forests. So, yeah, I made the book a little lighter by using Chad the Bard as your guide to the Great Indian Safari. And that is what I
Yeah.
did. So, yes, the
One
research. Yeah.
while you're talking about that book, I have one quick question for you. How did you uh, select the different species that you're gonna feature in this book, and were there something that you felt you kind of left out, or I'm sure your books usually have sequels, so will there be a sequel to this one as well?
I really hope. I hope it will be a series. Let's see how this goes, because yeah, I do want to write about a lot of other animals that I couldn't really fit in this book because it is for children, and it's for
Mm.
younger children, in fact, and it's a completely illustrated and colored book. So I couldn't really fit in too much, in it. But how I selected the animals was, yes, I wanted a bird to be there. I wanted an insect to be there. I didn't just want all the glamorous animals from India to feature in it. I also wanted the lesser known ones to be, talked about. So that is how I wanted a fish to be there, and that is why I brought in whale shark. I wanted the the wild ass to be there. So I wanted
Nice.
different types of animals that we get in India and from different regions, be it the Northeast, be it the Himalayas, be it the Indian Ocean, be it the desert. So that is how I compiled a list of animals that I wanted to use, and hopefully, I really hope that I'll get to write more of the Great Indian Safari and include more and more animals in it, because there are some animals that I would definitely like to write about, like the Indian wolf or dhol, which is the
The
wild
wild
dog,
dogs. Yeah.
which is found in
Yes.
India, or the caracal, which is getting less and less, or things like that. So hopefully, and as far as the research is concerned, of course, you have to do a lot of research, Shashwat. I mean, writing is just a very small part of, writing these kind of books where you're putting your name out there, where, children and even adults are reading and they think that it is the right thing you have written. And of course, we have a team of publishers, who also check the facts and everything, and they get back to us. And there's a lot of back and forth that happens even after writing a book. So, in fact, I have written another book called Divine DNA, which is going to be
Yes.
published by HarperCollins, hopefully by
Mhm.
the end of this year or early next year. And I have traced the evolution, history, the past, and the present of 7 animals of Indian mythology. And the kind of research that I had to do in it was massive. I mean, I don't think I would have done so much research for any book so far. So you have to
Hmm.
first, read. So I would start reading, say, about mammoths, and then I would start reading something else about Neanderthal since I was reading about mammoths. Then I would start reading about something entirely, different from the current, from recent past, like this guy who had in Europe who had found this graveyard of mammoths, and he had collected all the bones and created a leviathan, the biblical
Hmm.
Leviathan from it, and he was doing exhibition, traveling exhibition to many countries in Europe, and charging a thumping amount for it. Till the Natural History Museum, I think, bought that from him and recreated it, and they realized that it was not a Leviathan, and he made such a lot of money out of it. So when you start doing research, you get kind of pulled into a lot of other things, and then you have to remind yourself that no, you have to stick on the topic, and you have to kind of read about just that and not like get carried away. So yes, I had to, and I really enjoyed uh, the research process of writing for this particular book. I, of course, read a lot online. And even when you read online, even when you read Wikipedia and things like that, you will find a lot of links that they give, the reference
Yeah.
links. So, I actually
Yeah.
go to those reference links also, and I read a lot from those reference links. Sometimes you find gems there, like, maybe a newspaper cutting from 100 years back, which they have put a photograph of and referred to. And I, of course, we have a library, as I said, so I refer to the books a lot. Whenever I am in Udaipur, I, sometimes carry those books here. I read them, and I find a lot of gems there as well, because some of uh, the natural history books from
Yeah.
maybe all those years back, from the early 20th century and things like that, you find a lot of amazing information from naturalists and hunters of those days. And I also talk to wildlife experts and naturalists and people who are experts in their fields, and because of my father and the kind of background that we know a lot of people in the field. So if I want to find out about a particular thing which I'm not finding otherwise, I talk to them. I talk to my father about it. I discuss a lot of things with him as well, although he has had a couple of brain strokes, three brain strokes, and he it doesn't talk as much as he used to, but still his memory of old is sharp in many things, so I can still take a lot of advice from him. So yeah, that is how I do my research, and I also visit places. It is not just about reading; it is also about experiencing, because when you experience a place, only then you have a very inclusive perspective of that, of the place, of the animals, of everything else. And that is how, yeah, so it entails a lot, researching.
Fascinating. I mean, that gets me to the bang on to the question that I had in mind. That you, being a wildlife warden, honorary wildlife warden at Udaipur, and thanks to the again the exposure that you got visiting to different parks and sanctuaries, and what are your, if I may ask, if you force you to pick up a couple of those memories that that have made a mark on you, citing some sighting or anything like that. So if I were to ask you, what would those be?
I can tell you a couple of instances. So, one, of course, you asked me at the start, and I missed replying to that. That one, about one of my earlier memories of wild and forests.
Yeah.
So, talking of that, I remember we had gone to Ranthambore, and we were just kids. And we were staying, of course, the director of the park was a good friend of my father, Nathawat uncle. And we were staying in that small palace that you have inside called Jogi Mahal, if you know. There's a small palace by the lake where you actually spot the tigers very often. We were staying there, and in those days, the tigers were in abundance. So we had got actually very tired all of us kids had got tired of seeing panthers and of course the depredations of cheetal and all that. It was so after a point of time we told the adults that we will be just staying here and playing, and you all can go on your safaris or whatever. We will just remain at Jogi Mahal, and it was anyway inside the park. So I remember playing under the same banyan tree. There is a huge, massive banyan tree just outside Jogi Mahal, where a tigress used to be seated the whole day. And she would be there, and we would be playing a few branches away. And soon after we left, I think a week after we left, she actually, very unfortunately, she killed a child on the steps of a temple close by. So that is one of my earlier memories of forest. And one of the instances, I have actually many stories from the wild, but one of the lessons that I have learned from the wild, I'll tell you that. Daddy used to take us, as I told you, to all these forests every summer vacation. And that particular summer, we had gone to Sumer, which is one of the smaller parts of Kumbhalgarh National Park. Kumbhalgarh was not a national park then. So we used to, Sumer was Daddy's favorite, and there was a small forest rest house there where we would go and live. And every evening, we would go to see the animals near a water hole. And so, as you would know, then that dawn and dusk are the two best times to spot animals in the wild. That is because all three kinds of animals, the nocturnal, the diurnal, and the crepuscular, are most active at that time. So one kind of animal is retiring, the other is waking up, and of course crepuscular animals, they are most active at dawn and dusk. So all these animals, either they are calling it a day or starting their day, they need a drink of water. So that is the reason they visit a water body. And in summers all over India, in many sanctuaries and national parks, you have these water holes that forest departments, they manage there. They fill it because the water becomes so less in the forest for animals. They keep filling these water holes periodically. And that is where you see, in summers, if you go there, you will see a lot of camaraderie between the animals. We have seen, hyenas and peacocks drinking side by side. We have so many times seen predators and prey, having a drink very cordially side by side. So we used to. I'm not a morning person, so we would always go in the evening with Daddy to sit by a water hole, which was right outside our forest guest house. We were sitting there one evening. One of my school friends, Shweta, she had also come along, and my brothers Sadat and Hasnain were with us, and it was my father and mother. So we were sitting behind a few bushes. And there was a water hole at a little distance. Of course, we didn't even have a danda or anything in hand. We didn't have anything at all. So was a sounder of wild boars that would come to drink water there every evening. A sounder of 17 wild boars. While we were sitting, the wild boar, the sounder, the whole group came. They started drinking water. We were behind these bushes. And there was this big cobra that passed right on top of my father's shoes. And it went a little away. We didn't move, of course. And at the same time, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe one of us moved, and the sounder of wild boars, they sensed some movement and danger ahead. So all the 17 of them attacked us. So here you have this cobra which is slithering by, and there you have the 17 wild boars attacking us. So my friend who was with me, she of course lost it, and she kind of squeezed my hand. And my father just raised his hand like this for all of us to be eye still, not to move, not to run. So I just squeezed Shweta's hand back, and I said, there's nothing to worry, everything is all right, when everything was not all right. And in a few moments, we kept on sitting, And of course, we used to believe that if daddy has said everything is fine, then everything is fine. There's, everything is hunky dory. We don't need to worry about anything. So now these wild boars, they came very near to us. They were just a few feet away, and suddenly they stopped on their own. And they started making these huffing and puffing noises for, I don't know, it seemed like a very long time, but it was, a very short time, in fact. And after that, they turned and they went away. And the cobra also, we try to get up and follow the cobra. We love snakes, my brother Sadat and I, and all that, so we always want to go after one whenever we see it. So we started to go after this cobra. It raised its hood, it demonstrated for a bit, and then we backed off, and the cobra also went away. So my father said that, probably what would have happened is that the wild boars, the direction of the wind changed, and the wild boars smelt us. And they realized that there were humans ahead, and they didn't want to attack, and they just went away. So that was very lucky. And my father said that, he was also very concerned that they don't get any closer. But he said that if we had got up and ran, maybe, we would have got very badly injured in the stampede that would have happened. So the lesson that I learned there, Shashwat, was that animals are large-hearted. How will we behave if a cobra or a wild boar enters our home? Or forget about our home, even our garden, our backyard, our lane, or our city. We will not rest in peace till the time they are captured or even killed. So, that was one of the greatest lessons that I have learned from the wild.
Fascinating. I thank you so much, Arifa, because this also gives us um, uh, an indication of, as you said, you are a storyteller and you just narrated this story, and you got us hooked into the whole incident itself. So that's so wonderful, and this is especially more relevant now in our times today, when we keep hearing and reading so many things about the man animal conflict, and how there's almost this at boundaries of most of our parks, and you see all these things. There's so much of strife that is happening. So this mutual respect that we need to have for each other is very critical and important. Just coming back to your book, finally, there's one interesting thing that was there I wanted to check with you is your books are also very visually rich. There are beautiful illustrations that are part of your book, including the ones that the Great Indian Safari itself. um, how important is this this collaboration between an author and an illustrator, and how do you go about that? How do you convey what you've written, and how does that get translated into a imagery?
Right. So, what generally I like to do, Shashwat, is I like the illustrator to first read the book and imagine it, because I am not a visual artist myself, and rely. I would like to rely on the imagination of the illustrator. So if I don't find, them doing a great job or not really conveying what I had in mind, then I step in. But otherwise, I just, let them do it. Let them share a few thoughts that they have initially on the manuscript. Share it with us if we like it, or what are the tweaks that we would want to do in it. So we have a bit of back and forth with the publisher and the editor and the team, and also the illustrator, and we convey what we want. But there have been instances, like even with the Great Indian Safari, Mohit actually completely understood what I wanted, and he has really got the Indian wildlife to life in this book. And I'm quite in love with some of the illustrations that he has done. So yeah, sometimes you find just the correct match of the illustrator and author, and if you have a good editor, and many a times they know, how an author is imagining her works to be, brought to life by illustrations, and they try to kind of, pair you up with the right match. And I have had a long working relationship with some of my editors, and I know, that they will understand what I'm trying to bring out through that. So it becomes all the more easier for me, when the editor knows what exactly, how to pair an illustrator and author. And for another book, in fact, I should mention that it's called Ambra and the Witch. So I worked with Chetan Sharma in it, And he actually just, I think he just plucked the characters out of my mind and he put them on page. And he said that, he had visited Rajasthan, he had done some work there. He's a digital artist as well, and he had done some works there. And he said that, he just knew what I had in mind, and he completely. So with him, actually, I had to. There was minimum back and forth that happened. Then he sent the first, character sketches. I completely fell in love with them.
Fascinating. And it's so interesting that you also spoke about the role the editors play in this whole process, because
Very
um,
good, very good.
uh, when people when they pick up a book, they know about the author and they know about the illustrator, but not the editors who are working in the back end,
Absolutely.
largely not known. Yeah. So coming coming to the main crux of our matter, that is there. It has been, as an author, your writing process, because this webinar will be watched by a lot of people who aspire to write themselves. And first, I must first and foremost, I must say that I'm surprised by how prolific you are. The sheer amount of writing that you do in a year time is amazing. Not only the
Thank you.
books that you're doing, but you're regularly contributing to newspapers, to different online journals, and those kind of things. So that's amazing. So how do you manage, and how do you find the time? And do you go through this very, the writer's block kind of a thing? Are there times when you're also, suffering from those kind of syndromes?
I have never actually suffered from a writer's block. I don't know what that writer's block means, because even when I'm writing one book, I have something else going in my mind that I want to write next. When I'm writing one article, I'm already thinking about the next one that I'm going to write. So thankfully, till now, I have never had sort of a block in my mind, because my imagination, I mean, it's always running wild, like the animals I love. So, no, I've not faced this writer's block ever. And if you could just please repeat the first question that you asked, my advice to the budding writers.
Your process. Arifa, what a lot of people would be interested in, what is your process? Do you start in the day? Is there a set number of words that you write every day? uh, how do you look for inspiration? How do you unwind those kind of things?
So, the inspiration, as I said, is all around us. If you feel you are having a writer's block, you can just take a walk down the street, see the houses which are there, look at the history of a house, how long it has been. Think about the world from maybe, just a perspective of the house which you are seeing, if nothing else. You will find a lot of people walking on the street. You can think, what that person has in mind, how he or she or they started their day, and what is it that they are going back home to. You can look at the vegetation around, if there is any. You can think about the bird that you saw, or a little worm that you saw, and how their day has been, or what their life would be about. So there is so much inspiration all around. I recently wrote an article for Indian Express on the graveyard in Colombo,
Yeah,
the Kanatta
Colombo, yes.
Cemetery. And I, in
How
fact,
everyone left
wrote,
together peacefully.
yes, that everybody is laying in rest peacefully. Even if you just visit a cemetery, you will find a million stories there of loves lost and loves gained, and political drama and whatnot. If you just go around and look at the headstones in a cemetery, you will get so much inspiration. So I feel inspiration is all around you. You have to keep all your senses open. You have to keep listening, you have to keep feeling, you have to keep seeing, you have to keep tasting, you have to experience, to write. So my process, basically, as I said, I have several ideas going on at the same time. So whatever I want to write about, I do an outline of it first. Not the articles, of course, those are very small pieces. But if, say, I was writing the Great Indian Safari, what I did was I just, outlined the chapters first. That I outlined the kind of animals that I want to write about. Then I thought about how I will introduce those animals. Is it going to be, just a factual book, or do I need to bring in more? So I think then I internalize that whole thing and then think that what will I enjoy doing? What will I enjoy reading if I were writing, if I were to pick up this book? So once I have that clearly in my head, then I try to, for instance, in this book, the crow is the sutradhar, if you may say. So, things like that. I pinpoint that. Then I do my research. Research is what comes
Mhm.
next after I have an outline on what I want to work about. Like even The Witch in the People Tree, when I wrote, though it is fiction, I had to do as much research as you would do for nonfiction because it's a period novel. I had to get every little detail correct, what they wore, what people wore, how they spoke, what their grievances were, what time they went to bed, what they ate, what were the normal dishes that were cooked, how were the roads, how were the steps in a house, how a house would be made, how the colonies were, how the different communities interacted at that time. There was so much to research on, and there were no books that I could refer to. Because, in fact, one of the editors, Tarun Saint, he's also from Udaipur, and he wrote to me and he said that, house, he's a connoisseur of, these literature on independence. So he has read a lot of books, and this book is set in 1950. He said he could not find any other books, maybe one or two, which actually spoke about that era. So there was so much research to be done because you didn't have ready material with you. And what I did with that book is that I fed on the collective memory of our family for all the small details. And fortunately, I had people who were living from that era to this one, and are some of our family friends. Like, if I needed some clarifications for how the police force operated in those days, I could contact somebody who had been in the police force, a very senior person, and so on. So that is the kind of research that you do, because for writing, as they say, I was given this advice by my uncle Rajnikant Verma, who was also a socialist leader and a writer. And he had told me, he's the younger brother of Lakshmikant Verma, if you know the famous author. So Rajni uncle had told me that even if you are writing fantasy, it has to ring true and it has to be drawn from your own experiences. Now, how you go about doing that, you go figure, but it has to ring true. So, to achieve that suspension of disbelief, you have to be true to the reader in whatever you are writing. So, next comes the research, whether you're writing fiction or non-fiction or fantasy or whatever that is. And after that comes the writing. So that is basically my process of writing a book. And I do have a certain number of words. You need to have discipline if you're doing anything in your life. If you're trying to lose weight or if you're trying to write a book, you need to have discipline. So for that, I do try to, stick to a particular number of words that I decide for any book to write per day. And yeah, so, and then it is all fun. You go ahead and you pen down the story.
And how big a fan are you of rewriting? A lot of people have said that uh, rewriting is a process that they kind of dread, and once the manuscript and revisiting it again, it's a thing. What is it with you when it comes to rewriting a story?
It doesn't happen too much with me. I don't do a lot of rewriting, but of course, I do read it quite a few times, the first draft, and try to see. But generally, I don't do major rewriting, or I have not done that so far for any of my books. I may rearrange the chapters maybe on how I would like a story to flow, like even for The Witch in the People Tree, for the next edition or wherever. I mean, I have actually rearranged the book, the chapters, and put in the characters together. A few chapters of the characters together in each part of the way, rather than. So yeah, those rearranging thing I might still do, but not a lot of rewriting. But as you're saying, it does work for a lot of authors because they just put down a very raw draft initially, and then they want to revisit it. And for them, and you should do it if it works for you. And if you are revisiting it, you should always have a gap in between. You should let it sit for some time. You should also let yourself away from your work for some time, and then visit it with a fresh perspective after a few days or a few weeks or even a few months. Actually, I know people who actually let it lay for a few months and then visit it again.
Fascinating. Uh, Finally, one question I have is, what is your view on writing as a profession? A lot of people, they want to know if they want to make a career. A lot of aspiring writers who want to make a career through writing. Hopefully, writing children's book, and hopefully writing children's book like yourself on nature and those such themes. What would your advice be to them?
Um, well, as a career, when I started writing, I'll tell you what happened. So, as I told you, Aditya really insisted that I take my writing more seriously, and I just wrote this novel in 3 months' time. And I was a newbie, nobody knew me in the publishing industry. So, it was very difficult to find a good publisher initially because nobody knew of your work. And, there is uh, they have a big slush pile, as all the publishers, the kind of inquiries that they get and the kind of queries that they get from new authors. And so your work, more often than not, either goes unread or gets lost in that slush pile when you send it out. So Aditya told me that forget about being published or forget about earning money. I'm here to do that. You just follow your passion. You go ahead and you write because you're enjoying that process. So you go ahead and write. And if you are good enough, the publishing will happen. It is incidental. And that is what I started doing. So the book to get first published was the second book that I wrote, which is The Tales from the Wild. And this was the first book that got published. And this was the first book that I wrote. I ran the Quest of Five. So slowly, when people started to read my work and know of my work, then of course, it was a completely different thing altogether. But as a profession, if you are thinking of earning money out of it, and that is the reason you would like to pursue writing, then there is a caveat there, that you will not be earning enough to sustain yourself. So you need to have a day job and just pursue this as a passion and something that you truly enjoy doing. So all of us who have passions to do something, we find time to do that regardless of our busy schedules, regardless of whatever is happening in our lives, because that is a stress buster for us. That is something that gives us fulfillment and joy. So I would say that people who are wanting to write for children, especially in India, or even for adults for that matter, if you're starting off, do it for the love of it. And if of course, if your work gets recognized, if you become the next Arundhati Roy or Ramchandra Guha, I mean, of course, you will not need to have a day job after that. You can just pursue writing as a career. And many, children's authors, especially I would like to talk about our community, Shashwat, are amazing people in India, the small community that we have of children's writers. They are really good people. The editors, the publishers, the writers, nobody has big egos. I mean, most of them, nobody has big egos. Nobody has and all of them, I can tell you that they are writing for the love of writing. And that is why I'm so happy to be a part of that community.
Fascinating. With that, but I just wanted one quick thing is, with all these wonderful books, which are the ones that we can expect from you? I read somewhere which was a fascinating title for me. The Tale of a Magpie Robin is one of the
Yeah.
books. Your second novel is gonna come. So just take us briefly through what can we expect from you in the coming days.
So Shashwat, I believe in exploring the frontiers of the possible, and that is why I challenge myself to write something different, write something completely new from what I have written before, and write it better than whatever I've written before. So I keep challenging myself, and that is what I enjoy, because after you start writing, you do well in a particular niche or a particular genre. People, put you in that niche, and then you are known for that kind of writing only. So if you look at J.K. Rowling, for instance, she was known for Harry Potter, for a fantasy. She has been known as a fantasy writer, but then she started writing this mystery series. Even if you look at an author like Stephen King, he was really known for his horror novels, of course, but he has
Yeah.
written some amazing novels like The Shawshank Redemption and The Last Mile or The Green Mile. So uh, I kind of like to keep on experimenting with my writing. So when I started writing for adults, Aditya again had been, of course, I'm known for my writing on nature and wildlife. I wanted to get out of that. Not that I wanted to stop writing that, but I wanted to write something else. So even for children, I started writing some different kinds of books, like Gupshup Goes to Prison, which I spoke about, which is about open prisons in India. Then I wrote Amra in the Witch, which is about the Bhil tribals in Rajasthan. Then I wrote The Chirmi Chasers, which is again about the game of Sitolia, if you know the seven stones that and
Yeah.
how it is played in the rural and the urban areas. And that is again about children, where I have addressed the questions of caste and class in that fun sort of sports story, and so on. So I was doing that. Then I thought I should write for adults. And Aditya also had been telling me to do that. And The Witch in the People Tree is a COVID novel. I wrote it, during the first wave of COVID. And I was like, exceptionally happy during that phase because we were caught in the small cottage that we have in Sri Lanka, which is by a small lake, and we have all sorts of wildlife around, including saltwater crocodiles to porcupines to fireflies to monitor lizards, everything. So I was very happy and very relaxed during that time. Aditya was also at home. He would be gardening, and I would be cooking up cooking up some worlds of 1950 Udaipur. So I really enjoyed that, writing that novel, which is more of a literary novel. After that, I thought I needed to write something again different from what I had written, in the adult writing space. And that's when I wrote The Tale of a Magpie Robin, which is a faster paced novel. It's an upmarket fiction, a literary mystery, but a faster paced novel, based and more contemporary. It is based in 1999 Udaipur and the forest of Sumer in Kumbhalgarh, and in 2009 Colombo. So the novel does back and forth, and it is the story of three friends, one of whom is a well-known author of romantic fiction based in Sri Lanka. The other is the wife of the Indian cricket captain, who was an Insta star as well. And the third is an undiplomatic diplomat who's doing very well. And these are three estranged friends who meet at the funeral of their combined mentor, who used to be a very well-known journalistic figure called KK in Sri Lanka, and how tabloid journalist has unearthed a story of their fourth friend that went missing 40 years back in Sumer forest in Rajasthan when they were on a treasure hunt. So that is what the story is about, the tale of a magpie robin. Uh, yeah. And in the interim, I have written a few children's books also last year, which hopefully will be coming out next year.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arifa, for your time. It has been fascinating, this conversation, and I'm sure a lot of people will take away a lot of interesting bits about from this conversation itself. One of the main things that I possibly as the love of storytelling. It's a trait that you kind of inherit, but it's also a trait that you work on. It's not something that you take for granted, and you keep pushing the envelope all the time, doing your research, doing the things, and not just banking on the things that you've got. So thank you so much, Arifa. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you luck. I look forward to reading all the books that are gonna come from your stable, which in the people tree is right here with me. So hopefully a lot many more. Thank you so much.
Thank you indeed, Shashwat. It was delightful talking to you today.
Have a great day. And to all our viewers, we'll meet again next month as usual. Our course, Nature Writing for Children online course, is gonna, we are gonna announce the dates for which very soon. It's gonna take place in November. So keep an eye out for the announcements from our end. Thank you so much. Have a great day.